For those who don't know, my name is Brian Humphrey. I work and oversee discipline, athletics, and student services. The lady who checked you in was Miss Manchester. You call our office, a lot of times you get Miss Manchester. She's a lot of help, because the whole idea today is to get you the information you need so that you can manage doing your sport. The value that you give to the school district by being an experienced coach is unmeasurable. The fact that a lot of you I've seen at this training every year we've offered it means that you know the transportation rules, you know the FHSA rules, the EMSAC rules, and you know the ethics policies. And so that's the information that we're trying to give you today. In the fact that you guys come year in and year out make you a valuable asset to Okaloosa County as far as the job that you do. All right, so to start things off, we're going to have two speakers come up. One's going to be Miss Michelle Carmichael. If you do not know Michelle, she works with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and she has some information that she's wanting to pass on to you. So we'll start out right now with Michelle.
Hey guys, thank you for allowing me to speak just a few minutes. I'm really excited about the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and what we can offer you guys at the next level. The beautiful thing about the Fellowship of Christian Athletes is it's not something that just anybody makes up. It's been around since 1954, and we've been in partnership with the schools and with organizations to offer you many things. Next year, we have really some exciting things to offer you guys. We will have a staff person that's attached to the schools in your areas to help you be able to grow deeper in what it is that you would like to see through these resources that we have. So I will be meeting with the principals during the summertime and letting them allow what it is that they would like to gauge onto their campuses. The biggest thing that I'd like to offer you guys today is 3D coaching. It's not a new strategy on how to be a better coach, because we all know that we're good coaches, but it's a strategy of how to coach this generation. We all know that this generation is just a little bit, will quickly walk off the field or get out of the court. They don't really have the drive anymore. So it's putting the heart back into sports. So if I may take some time to offer you this little video real quick. And then we have a testimony that I'd like to share with you. This testimony is from a program that we offered several years ago, and we brought it back into a training last summer back in July, and we offered scholarships. FCA wanted to partner with you guys in partnering with 3D. And so these scholarships are opportunities to take this course. But this course is not just for your information, it's also to benefit you too, because it gives you 20 credit hours. It also, if you want to take it at a college level, it gives you those 60 hours of credit college hours as well. But you'll be surprised at what the modules actually represent to you and what it can give you as a new strategy and a new game plan on how to help these students today. So Rex Bowman did the program last year, and he'll give just a brief testimony of how he's put that into order. So I'd like to start the video now. Thank you.
The two most powerful words in the life of the adolescent are coach says.
We submit in three-dimensional coaching that it is not just important, it is essential to have strategies at all three dimensions.
To neglect one aspect is by definition to not help your athletes be the best they can be. The truth is, we are three-dimensional beings, so it only makes sense that we address all three dimensions if we want to maximize player potential.
First dimension coaching deals with the fundamentals or the physicality of sport. We've defined the 8 areas that all sports have in common with the physicality.
Strength and speed, power, skills, tactic, techniques, those kinds of things fall at the first level, and you need to be good at those.
But listen, surveying coaches, we found out this is not the area of main concern now. It has to do with second dimension issues.
Things like motivation, confidence, emotions, team cohesion, goal setting, the mental, emotional, and relational components of sport.
Third dimension. This is the area that very few discuss, but it is the core essence of what ties it all together.
The heart, which is sort of this executive center of who we are, the role of which is to choose what we are going to value and ascribe worth.
We know this, whether a coach intentionally coaches these things or not, we know that sport is having an effect on this level.
Every dimension integrates and affects the other. If I'm full of self-doubt because I don't believe I can do something, it's going to affect my performance. We see it in performance, the physical, but it's always connected to the mental and even the heart of who I am.
Utilizing the 3D framework helps coaches to be intentional about becoming fundamentally sound, skilled at coaching the mind, and focused on developing the heart.
One coach will impact more people in 1 year than the average person does in a lifetime. Now, as you go forth to fulfill your transformational purpose with great intentionality, not only will you positively impact the lives of those you coach directly, but because of your influence, you can impact an entire community.
Hi, I'm Rex Bowman, I coach at Pryor. I think Michelle sought me out for this class. I was one of the first ones in the county because she knew I needed saving. I need some sensitivity training, so it worked out pretty good for me, I guess. I still got a long way to go, but I'm about to get this whole thing up. But the course is very worthwhile. It's basically getting to know your kids at a time when they're more sensitive than ever. They get their feelings hurt, so do their parents. And it's taking time to get to know them outside of sports and be a little bit more sensitive. You know, the thing they seem to be more passionate about than anything is their cell phones. And but this really helps, and it gives you a lot of strategies and ideas of how to deal with these kids and be a little bit more sensitive. I found myself yelling a lot less. A lot of us have a tendency to coach the way that we were coached, especially our older coaches. It don't work too well these days. And with my girls' basketball team, not just individually getting to know them better outside of sports, but it built team cohesion. I mean, the camaraderie amongst your team made a big difference, and I encourage all y'all to take it. It costs money, but she finds a way to get scholarship money too. I got it for free, so maybe y'all can. She sought out the people that needed it most last year, so maybe this year some of y'all can get a chance to get into it. But I appreciate Michelle, seeking me to do it. I learned a lot from it, and I think y'all can too, especially you older coaches. Buckaloo. Stop yelling so much. I was watching you this year, and I yell a lot less than I used to. All right, Michelle, that's it.
Thank you, Rex.
Okay, that was great testimony.
The Florida High School Association has certified this as well. It's dimensional, it's transformational. It teaches the kids to take ownership to where kids don't take ownership right now. We're having a lot of hard times with that, with the kids not having anything to value. They have their identity to value. So it teaches you to and through the coach. FCA is to and through the coach. And so it equips you to be able to teach them how to value themselves and their identity and in their purpose where they can be successful. I do have 22 scholarships I'd like to offer you guys. So go back, talk to your principals, see if they would be willing to allow you to implement that onto your campuses. And I'm really easy to get a hold of. I'd like to just give you my telephone number right now, and you can write it down if you're interested. Emerald Coast FCA is the website. My telephone number is 850-217-0391. And the staff people that we will be putting onto the campuses are going to be people that will be equipped with this as well, that will support you guys in your endeavors as well. We've had the beautiful opportunities to have campus coaches that are volunteers in the past, and they will be there to help as well. But the beautiful thing is to have someone attached to help the schools be successful. Thank you guys for your time.
Next up is Mr. Drew Espy. He's with the All Sports Association, who puts on the All Sports banquet every year for our high school athletes across the Panhandle, and so we're going to give him a few minutes to address some topics.
Everybody, I'm Drew Espy, president of All Sports this year. Before I get into my outline, I just want to say thank you to all coaches. I'm a product of Okaloosa County school system from kindergarten all the way through graduation at Choctaw. I played for a lot of great coaches, Coach Tom Grant, Meggs, Lionel Fayard at Choctaw. Show you how old Rex is. Rex is actually one of my coaches as well, and he could have used that sensitivity training a long time ago. And I did want to say, if I had showed up at 8:07 like he did today, I'd be doing push-ups and gassers until I puked. So I want to see some of that before I leave. But it takes a special person to be a coach, and the impact that coaches had on my life was amazing. So thank you for all you do. I know now, these days, I help coach my younger son a lot, so I know it's a lot different than it was, so I know it's probably a lot tougher, but thank you to everybody. You're making a difference in kids' lives and making a difference in everything they do. So a little bit about All Sports. All Sports organization, we celebrated our 50th year last year. We've been around for a long time. Our mission basically is we like to recognize local high school athletes from the area. We usually recognize two collegiate, a male and female collegiate athlete from the area, a male and female high school athlete from the area, a professional athlete from the area, a Special Olympian, and then also an amateur athlete. We'd like to also recognize community leaders that promote youth athletics, and then we provide, one of our main missions is provide resources and support to youth athletics. So our main drive is we raise money. We're a fundraising organization that raises money and donates back to our community. We give away at our banquet each year roughly $150,000 to Boys and Girls Club, Special Olympics, FCA, and Eleanor Johnson Youth Center. On top of that, last year we also gave away an additional roughly $55,000 to local sports, local athletics, thanks to the community. For example, we helped Fort Walton Beach High School repave their track. We spent $10,000 there. We spent $10,000 at Silver Sands to help repave their track. We're helping with the Raider hitting facility. We helped with Emerald Coast Sailing buy some sailboats. So our banquets are a big event. We bring in a lot of money there, but when we get the money, we kind of push it out. Some of the things we do, we tie in nicely with FCA. FCA is one of our big four. We do host a few things. Now, a lot of the stuff we do is more geared toward the high school student, but a lot of your kids are going to be in high school here soon, so we want to go ahead and get some information to y'all early. A few things that your students can attend and can do. We tie up with, or partner up with FCA. We do a FCA breakfast the Friday of the banquet every year, which is this year February 14th. And we also do a night of integrity. Now, this is something that's somewhat new. We partner with the Sheriff's Department and FCA. We put on an event here at the college, and we're trying to get more than just the FCA huddle groups. We like to get some teams, sections of teams to come. We bring speakers in, and they're not the speakers like our banquets. They're not the Tim Tebows or the Nick Sabans. They're people like Inky Johnson, or we brought Darryl Strawberry in last year, or Chris Herron. These are people that NFL teams, Inky Johnson and Chris Herron, are mandatory for a rookie in the NFL and the NBA. They have to go see a presentation from him. Inky Johnson goes around to Florida State, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU. These universities are bringing these guys in to speak to their teams. And we're fortunate enough that we're able to partner with the Sheriff's Department and bring them in here to speak to our local youth and our local athletes. We'd like to really work on getting more attendance. Our attendance is kind of low in the past couple of years, but we're trying to figure out ways to drive that. It's a great opportunity for teams and coaches to kind of get behind and bring those kids together and bring them to these events. It's very powerful, they're great events. We have SIDs. They serve as liaisons to local high schools. We're introducing a lot of new SIDs this year to kind of get better ideas of what's going on in the schools in terms of what athletes, what's going on with the athletes, what their academics are like, and we talk with them to get the award winners and try to just make a presence and be at the events. At our banquets, we went over that we recognize the award winners. We also this year recognized a new Assistant Coach of the Year award, a high school Assistant Coach of the Year. That was something that came out of this meeting last year. Tom Grant from Crestview High School's offensive line was the first recipient. So that's a little bit about what we do. We also work with the Taylor Haugen Trophy. They're a big part of our organization. We present the Taylor Haugen Trophy at our FCA breakfast each year. That is something that is voted on by the Taylor Haugen Foundation and also all the old Taylor Haugen winners. So any questions you have for us, anything we can do to help you, we welcome it. We're always looking for ways to help anything we can do to help out with the local youth athletics and local community. So, again, thank you for your time. Drew Espy, the new president this year with All Sports. So, thank you all.
The next part, if you go down the agenda, you'll notice that we're going to go over what's called the EMSAC handbook. And before we go over the EMSAC handbook, just let me clarify that the handbook is local rules, and if something's not in the handbook, we default on the FHSA handbook. So there's rules that you may encounter throughout your season, or sport-specific rules that you encounter throughout your season. If it's not in the handbook, we're going to default to FHSA, and they default to the National Federation of High School Sports. Those are the rules that we go by. The EMSAC manual that you have a copy of in front of you, we're going to go through it part by part, page by page this morning. It's more of a local rules thing that's been kind of outlined by the EMSAC principles. And so the EMSAC principles over the last ever how many years have created these local rules in these points. And so we're going to go over that this morning. So to start this off, our EMSAC president is Mr. Gary Massey. He's now the principal at Brunner. He was at Shoal River, but when he moved to Brunner, he still is the EMSAC president, at least until the next vote. So as EMSAC president, he's going to go over the structure of the EMSAC, and when he finishes that, we'll start going over the other parts of the manual. So, Mr. Massey, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. So I did want to say that I am one of you. I coached as far as my talents could take me, so I went to about T-ball. So I appreciate all of you guys doing what you do at all of our schools. I do appreciate Brian Humphrey in the last 3 years that I've been president, kind of helping me along, as well as Coach Buckaloo and all the coaches at Shoal River. I'll start crying like Dick Vermeil up here if I keep talking about Shoal River, because they're a great crew. I'll miss you. So moving on, the philosophy of EMSAC is that we are working towards consistency to support your programs at the school. At this time, go ahead and take out your EMSAC manual, and we'll kind of run through a few pieces here. The membership includes all of the middle schools here in Okaloosa County. We do have a typo there. We left Laurel Hill out, but they are a voting member of the EMSAC group. Governance, of course, below that also has a typo without Laurel Hill. We're going to get that fixed. But the Okaloosa Middle School principals are the voting members of the EMSAC, and therefore you should make any of your principals aware of your request to make changes. So if you have something in the book that you'd like to see changed, I think we'll probably get to a little later, but tennis is a great example that the tennis coaches brought us a lot of changes, and we reviewed them, voted on them, and quite a few of them got passed. So moving on to the next page, the responsibilities of the EMSAC. Basically, we have 4 set meetings a year, plus any emergency meetings as things come up. Oftentimes, we'll do a vote via email as needed. And this is further support, showing that you need to talk to your principals, because these votes are very important. And oftentimes, the first thing I did when I saw a vote on the agenda was to go run to Coach Buckaloo or one of my coaches and say, okay, what do we think about this? And they would often guide me on that. Moving on to the next page, the general personnel policies. Again, we have a typo there. We want to make sure Laurel Hill is included at the top with the other schools. But these are the roles that everyone plays in relation to EMSAC. One of the points that we wanted to make was that volunteer coaches, anyone volunteering to work with students needs to go through the Okaloosa County volunteer process. No one should be working with students as a volunteer coach without going through the district volunteer approval process. Furthermore, if you ever go on an overnight trip, you have a higher level of approval that you have to require of your volunteers. So we want to make sure that everybody usually has a volunteer coordinator at your school. Ask some questions. If you have some volunteers that are working with kids, you need to get them approved. Now, we're not talking about a guest speaker. A guest speaker comes down from Northwest Florida State College, plays ball there, and wants to just talk to the kids with you there supervising. That's a little different. We're not talking about that. We're talking about volunteers that are there day in and day out. We need all of those approved and to go through the correct process, because ultimately we want to keep our kids safe. On the next slide, I think we're going to move into sportsmanship and eligibility. And invite Grant Meyer to come on up here, principal of Destin Middle School.
Good morning. Why the long faces, guys? We got 7 or 8 more days of school. We should be excited. So I got a few slides as we go through. When Mr. Humphreys asked me to do sportsmanship, I was like, really? Me? But so I've been where you are at, and I know the work and effort you guys put in throughout the school year, and I want to reiterate what some of these guys said, that we appreciate what you do. It is not an easy job these days, and you guys do make a difference. More so than anybody else in the school, more than the principal, assistant principals, some of the other teachers. The coach's influence is just far, far reaching. So, sportsmanship. Fortunately, we have great coaches in Okaloosa County. Overall, our sportsmanship is top-notch from our coaches and teaching our players what we expect as well. So some of the things that we've heard over the last couple years, maybe running up scores. You know, that's one that I hear from time to time. And guys, what goes around comes around. So just kind of remember that. You know, nobody stays at the top too long. So just keep that in mind. We're not trying to rub it in anybody's faces, but I do hear coaches say, when I have an opportunity, I'm going to turn it back around. So just kind of remember that. Signs like this, you're starting to see throughout the state. I got to travel the state the last couple of years and visit a lot of different schools because people are losing their minds. All right, so we probably have it in our schools too. The parents, the way they react to our coaches and officials, you know, it's just over the top right now. And I thought sometimes the officials do show up to this too. Guys, we don't have any young officials out there anymore. All right, they're just not coming up. All right, so I don't know what we got to do to help with that, but some of the sportsmanship goes along with that. So in your EMSAC manual, this is what it says about sportsmanship. It's so much more than this. But guys, the welfare and the best interest of the student athlete, that comes first. It's not you. It's not about wins or losses. It's about what's right for the kids. Okay, so that's the biggest thing there in our manual. I love this quote. It's an old quote, but it still holds true today. Just let you read it there. So practicing it goes a whole lot more than preaching it. Okay. Some advice. I know most of the ADs are in here too. Get with your principal. Some expectations on sportsmanship you might want to put in your coach's packet. And if you don't have a coach's packet, you might want to consider putting something together for a school coach's packet. Okay? And at the beginning of the year, maybe pre-planning or sometime as the school year starts, get your AD and your principal to go over these expectations. Daniel Griffin's our AD at Destin Middle, and he meets with the coaches at the beginning of the year and tries to be at every preseason coaches meeting and just reiterate some of those expectations. Good and bad examples, we could be here all day long with that, but it starts with the coach, you know, teaching our players what to do during the ball games, after the ball games. Bad examples, we see it from time to time. And the biggest thing with the bad examples is not correcting it. Right? Just take the time and tell your kid or your parent, that's not what we expect. Right? We're better than that. So this is one of the big ones, right here. You're reacting to bad calls. It's going to happen. It happens all the time. It probably will affect the outcome of certain games at big times. Okay? How many people remember Sean Payton getting suspended for, I think it was almost a year at a coaching? Who remembers that? I didn't really remember it either, but I remember this bad call and the way he reacted, right? And he handled himself probably better than most of us would handle it, okay? So, you know, his team's going to react, his fans are going to react based on how he reacted, and same thing with your players. They're going to follow your lead. So, and if we have any young coaches in here, and I wish somebody told me this when I first started coaching, you better build a relationship with these officials association, because there's going to be a time where you want them on your side. And I just did not realize that as a young coach. And I put myself in a position a few times that, you know, if I had a better relationship with the officials, maybe the call would have gone my way. Or maybe not kicked out of certain things. So, all right. So, eligibility. Moving on to that. So, guys, it's in the policy here. We're gonna hit a few things, but it seems like every year we miss one or two kids. Nobody's real fault, you know, but again, if the communication is good between your AD and the coach, and probably a secretary in the school, because there's somebody in the front office who helps with those things. You know, we can double and triple check GPA, paperwork. Do they have the parent permission and physical? Do they still have eligibility as far as consecutive semesters? So it's 6 consecutive semesters for an incoming 6th grader, 8 for a 5th grader if your school has it. And then age. All right, so if we check those things and double check, you know, we'll cover ourselves. But I will say, you know, the schools that do identify a mistake, we own up to it, but we hate doing it, especially if we have to forfeit a game or two because we overlooked something. There is policy now that has changed in the last year or so with eligibility, with this eligibility and attendance zoning eligibility. Your school and your principal can request a waiver or a hardship, and we'll talk about that maybe here in a second too. There's the school board policy that's in our EMSAC manual. I think it's page 7 or 8 we're starting to get to. That is 7. So I'm not going to read all that, but I do encourage you, if you really want to do some light reading, School Board Policy Chapter 4. It has a lot of things that coaches need to know. So those are the things I just hit on, the 6 consecutive semesters. GPA is 2.0 on the 4.0 scale. And remember, for middle school, it's every 9 weeks. Unlike the high school, the semester, it's every 9 weeks. And some sports start right about that 9 weeks time. So it could be a week later, it could be earlier. So if we're not checking as those grades are due, you know, just by a few days, we could lose an athlete or gain an athlete. Okay. And then Passive 5 core classes as well.
May I chime in real quick on that?
Absolutely.
So one of the things that came up this last year that we confirmed, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, the grade is final on a specific date. It's not when the report card comes out. So your eligibility is as of that final verification date for your grades.
Yeah. So those are the big ones there as well. And then the age, you hear that from time to time, that certain schools are playing a kid that's 16 or 17. It's 15 before
They
or
look
on
16 or 17.
August 31st. So, all right. Attendance zoning. And this, we may have to get Mr. Humphreys involved too. So with charter schools now, with homeschool, with the STEM academy, there's always a question on who can try out or play at what schools. And then add on top of that the controlled open enrollment. If there's schools at capacity, it brings on a whole nother level of who can play what. So
if you have somebody that comes to you that's going to try out for your program and they don't attend your school, like maybe they attend STEM, maybe they're a homeschool student, maybe they're an online school, but they don't attend your school, but they're coming to you to play on your sports team. The procedure we have in place for this is you have to get a letter from the administrator over the program they're coming from that says little Johnny is going to use his eligibility at your school. So if he's coming from homeschool, the homeschool director, Ms. Corbin, will write a letter to your principal saying, little Johnny's coming to your school for soccer. And without that letter, you can't let him play. He's not eligible. So anyone who's not enrolled in your school, and they're enrolled outside your school, but coming because they're allowed to, because STEM doesn't have sports, those kids can play at any one of your schools as long as you have an open seat or they're zoned for your school. So,
And on top of that, there's a lot of coaches that don't work on the campus. Right? For most schools, we have them. They don't know every kid that goes to that specific school. So there has to be, again, communication between this athletic director or that secretary and that principal if they got a letter from that other school that kid's trying out. Unfortunately, we did it. All right? We had a kid try out, and the coach didn't work on the campus. He doesn't know who this kid is. He was from the STEM Academy, and nobody knew he was trying out.
and the problem with that, I don't know if y'all remember a couple of years ago, and it may have been an oversight, I don't know, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but the kid tried out for 4 different teams and made all 4 of them. And none of the other schools were aware that the kid tried out for the other school. He just happened to be on everybody's roll, and then he picked. So if someone's not at your school, right, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time. And if it happens to you, you're not going to be laughing because that kid's going to be ineligible. He can only try out for 1 sport per school at a time. And so if a student comes to you and they're not enrolled in your school, they're called a non-traditional student. That non-traditional student needs a letter. Otherwise, don't let him come. All right.
What about overlapping sports? Like they finish one season at one school, and they start
So
before.
we just had this conversation with FHSA last week, is that you can only participate in 1 sport at 1 school at a time. So if you're playing a sport at a school and you're a homeschool student, let's say you're playing football at Bruner, if the sport was to overlap, you could not go to another school and play for 2 schools at the same time. But we don't have sports that overlap unless you, I don't think we have a sport.
Does Baker have
Baker
it?
is the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of our other sports, we make sure they end. So for the eligibility of a non-traditional student, just make sure you get that letter. For STEM, homeschool, charter school, private school, any of them coming to you, make sure you have that letter.
So there's the rest of that language. On that page, and I think it goes to 8, so there are violations that do occur. We don't want to give out any sanctions as far as forfeiting any games or a monetary fee if something goes wrong, but there is in the EMSAC Manual that $250 per violation is there. So you guys could read through that.
May I chime in one more time on that? So one of the things, and I've experienced this at our school, is that you guys, we run by the honor system, so if you do find that you broke an eligibility requirement, report it to your athletic director. Your athletic director will report it to your principal, and it will go to EMSAC. Obviously, it goes without saying, we don't want to try to hide that stuff. That's not something we want to practice, and not that that's ever happened to Shoal. I'm saying the opposite, but we want to make sure we report that right away if we discover it.
Next page. So on page 9 of the EMSAC Manual, it goes a little bit more in detail on that special eligibility. Again, if you have a homeschool or alternative school or charter schools athlete, just double check with your AD and principal. Sometimes we're also dealing with those students that live outside the county. So especially the schools that are close to the county line, you could have a kid that lives outside of the county that are still asking about this as well. Just I encourage you to talk, and we'll call Brian and we'll say, all right, is this the policy for this student? So just double and triple check on those as well. But you can read through there. I think that might be it. I'll get into that in a few minutes. So.
I have a question on the letter. It's not in the manual here. Should that not be added into the manual? On the eligibility of STEM and all that, because it says the principal.
Must agree. You're saying the principal must agree?
I'm saying there's nothing in here about the letter.
The letter from the.
All right.
That should be in this manual.
We've not added, we will add it to the manual, that process. We've discussed it with all of the options for a non-traditional student to attend. So those programs know to do the letter.
But if we do that, it takes all the gray out of it, gets that out to everyone else.
That's a good
Back
point.
in there
I got you.
procedures.
I got you.
We've had this process for 2 years now, and it is something that should have been added to the manual. And so we'll put it in there so that everybody will understand. But your principals know of this, and then the administrators over these programs know of it. But we'll put it in the manual so that everybody knows. So on interscholastic contests, it's a small part in the manual. It's only a couple sentences, but all I want to say about the contest is we've made a requirement that in every sport there's a minimum number of games and a maximum number of games. So whatever sport you play, find out what the minimum is and find out what the maximum is and stay in that line. The minimum is a requirement for you to get the supplement. The maximum is a top out saying, hey, that's enough games. So don't go below the minimum, because then you'd be in danger of qualifying for the supplement from the district. But don't go over the maximum, because you'll end up making your principal mad if he's got to go to extra games because you just scheduled 40 games. So find the minimum, find the maximum. On the officials and umpires, I know not every sport in our EMSAC has referees, but for the sports that do have referees, they kind of dictate when we play. And the reason for that is like Mr. Meyer said, is we've got a shortage of referees and umpires. It's the truth. There's not as many as there used to be. It's kind of picked up a little bit this year. We kind of advertise a little bit. So if you know of people that might be interested, send them to the association for some training. The training to call middle school sports is a little bit less than calling FHSAA sports. So encourage people. But on the flip side of that, if you coach a sport that does have referees, when the ref is wrong, it's good to let them know that you're watching. But you need to kind of cap it a little bit, because you can get on him and on him and on him and on him. When he walks out, there's no games. So just know that, and then like Mr. Meyer said, that relationship with the Referees Association will help. And I'm not saying that, when the ref's wrong, you need to let him know you're watching, but you kind of understand that as soon as he walks out, you're not going to have games. We've had the Referee Association call and say, I'm not calling any games at that school, and I can't make them. So it had to get real bad for them to do that, but they did draw a line, and it took us 2 years to mend that relationship, and now they're calling games at that school again. But if they were to do that, and it would take a lot, just getting on them a little bit because they missed a call is not going to cause that. They understand that part. Just understand when we're working with officials, that relationship is a big deal. And then there's passes, and that's outlined in the manual. The next page where it says Jamboree tournaments, whenever we're doing these scheduling meetings now, all of y'all have been invited to your fall or winter or spring sports scheduling meeting. Jamborees and tip-offs are common in basketball. They've tried it a couple of times in basketball. They've done it a couple of times in baseball. Football does it. It's not mandatory. So if you have a preseason activity that dates before the season starts, where you're getting a bunch of teams together and you're having a classic or a jamboree, it's not mandatory that you participate in one, and it's up to the coaches to organize that. So if you don't want to participate in one, you don't have to, is what I'm letting you know. But it's just something that the coaches get together. You can get 3 or 4, 5, 6 teams together, and then you can play quarters or something. It is allowed in the handbook for you to have a jamboree. Okay?
The what? The rotation. Oh, and we put in a rotation. If there's a bunch of schools interested in having a jamboree, like let's say there's 8 schools interested, we would rotate the site so that the same person, because it would be a fundraiser for you. And the money for a jamboree is not taken by the EMSAC and kept. The money for the jamboree would be taken up by the EMSAC president in their school and their bookkeeper, but then it's divvied amongst the people who play. And the EMSAC doesn't keep any of that money. So it's a fundraiser for everyone that participates. For seeding, for the sports that have playoffs, we're doing a lot better than a couple of years ago, but it's important that once your season comes to an end and you finally got your conference games or the games that count, you'll get those to me, and I'll put them in a bracket, and we're doing playoffs for the top 4 in each class. So there's some schools that don't make the top 4 in their class, so you know you're not in the playoffs. But if I don't hear from you, I don't know that you're not in the playoffs. So you could have been like 0-15 is your record, but I don't know that. So I understand that you didn't send me your record. A lot of times when I call you, you say, well, I didn't send it to you because we didn't win a game. Well, I don't know that, unless I attend all your games. So always send in your record, because it helps me, even if you didn't make the playoffs, it helps me put the schools in, because the teams that did make the playoffs, they're calling me every few seconds, wanting to know, well, who's the 2 seed? Who's the 2 seed? Hold on, I got to get some more information. And so always include your record whenever your season's ending, whether you're in it or not. In the last part of the championship, we're doing, we've done a championship trophy and a runner-up trophy in every sport for each class, and we will continue to do that same thing. The ticket prices, yeah.
The last, the second to last sentence under championships in that last paragraph,
Yeah.
it says the tournament revenue generated will be equally divided. And like, for example, like I coached track, but I was always under the assumption the host school kept that money. So this year, prior hosted counties said they kept it. So
Yeah.
which one are we going with?
All right, that's a good question, a good point.
This is the first year that was the case.
There's a change in track, and let me address the track and then the other sports. There was a change in track because it's kind of, we all have taken Rex and Rockies for granted over these past, I don't know how many years I did.
Nobody's ever taken them.
So they've done it, and so nobody would want to host the track. So the EMSAC voted as an incentive for track, so that someone will host it, is they're going to get to keep the game as a fundraiser. And so that's going to increase the opportunities for everybody. It's going to be open next year for other schools to host it. And so when the opportunity comes to host, I don't know if y'all been to some of the scheduling meetings, but when all of the sports are sitting at a table, I'll walk by and go, okay, so who's hosting the golf tournament this year? And everybody looks down. And I go, come on, we have to have one host. Somebody host. And they act like they can't hear me. So I walk away and give them a few minutes and come back, and they still don't have a host. So it's the same in track. Everybody's not beating down the door, because as a track coach, it's just easier for me just to show up, let somebody else do all the work. All right. So as an incentive for track, the EMSAC has voted that whoever hosts gets to keep the game. All right.
We'll add language.
All right. So
this year.
all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, you can have it. I hate to bring this up, but we talked about during golf tournaments, during the problems with the course, about adding a $100 fee per team, boys and girls, to pay a course to host, because it's becoming such a problem to get someone to host. And they're shutting the course down for a day with no revenue other than if they rent a car to a parent.
So there'll be future discussion on what we can do to help with some of these tournaments and the people that are hosting. It would help to have some revenue come in for the host. And we're going to go over that when we get to the page on golf. So yeah, that's a good point. So let me go back to the playoff revenue for all the other sports.
Just a quick comment. We could have it on a rotating basis. I mean, I've been coaching tennis for 23 years. I've hosted one time. A lot of those years, Bruner or somebody else did it or wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But we can have it on a road. I mean, there's only so many schools, and it's your turn. And if somebody else wants to take that from you, they can choose to do that. I suppose.
I like the rotating idea for the host, but on the flip side of that, I'm not saying everybody couldn't do it. I would just hate for it to rotate to a program where somebody doesn't put forth at least 70% of the effort that Rex and Rocky put into the track. I hate to see it rotate to a school, and I'm not going to say what somebody would do that, but it's possible we rotate it to a school and it's a fiasco. Because if you've never run a track meet, there's a lot of work they did on the front end for weeks ahead of time in that tennis tournament that's put on every year. I hate to see that rotate and then somebody, you could monkey that up. It's possible. So by rotating it, you're saying that no matter who that person is, whether they're capable or not, it's their turn. And I hate to see that happen. So we'll discuss that though in the future. So back to the revenue for the championship for all sports. All the money that's taken in at a gate in the championship, whether it's soccer or football or baseball or basketball, all of that money is taken in and sent to Shoal River. The bookkeeper at Shoal River divvies it up and gives it back in portions for anyone who participated. So if I'm in a playoff game and I'm playing, Bruner's playing Shoal River in baseball in a playoff first round, both of them are getting a cut of the game. But first, the bills have to be paid. So what we'll do is we'll pay the referee. If there's a clock keeper or a scorekeeper that's an adult, if they're paid a little bit, they're paid out of the gate. Then any money left over is divvied up between the two schools and you'll get a check. So that should be happening all the time. I will say this is at one sports program, I was at a playoff game and there was some other principals standing with me, and we were counting the adults in the bleachers, and we counted 100 adults, and it's $4 a head, and this is a playoff game. And we go over to the ticket, the counter where they're taking up tickets, and in the till there was $36. So it's up to each coach to take on the responsibility of figuring out a way to funnel people in so that they buy tickets. If I'm hosting a basketball game and my gym has 4 doors and I open up all 4 doors and prop them open, and then I put a table over near the bathroom where people can drop money in to buy a ticket, I'll bet you nobody's going by that table. They're all just going to come in the doors. So it's the coach's responsibility to take ownership to make sure that your sport is profitable. So if you didn't get a check because you played in a baseball game, well, maybe they didn't make any money. And I know what you're thinking, well, there was 300 people at that baseball game. Well, I know, I saw it. But somebody has to take the responsibility to make sure that we're doing our ticket-taking diligence to make sure that we're getting tickets. Because that's, all of our schools need the money. There's nobody, after your playoffs, you had an added expense of travel. It would be nice to get a check for $300 or $500. So, but we're counting on that host school doing their job at the ticket table.
Question about that.
Yeah.
On those championship stuff, is it typical for hospitality costs to come out of that money too?
You are allowed to have a hospitality cost. You are allowed to pay an adult bookkeeper or a clock keeper. It's $25. $25. We've had that discussion amongst the EMSAC principals, and they've all agreed that those expenses are allowed, and it's up to the host school.
So, may I chime in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
And the reason we came to that is because a lot of times we run out of duties with our teachers, and we have games that we need someone to come in and do tickets, and you have some volunteers that are willing to do it if you throw them $25. So that's just the basic cost of a ticket taker. Money.
Yeah. But does anybody else have a question about the money that should be coming back to you in playoffs?
Do you want me to chime in about the trophies and how that money is in the pocket money?
You can. Because all the playoff money goes back to the school. It has nothing to do with buying trophies.
But while we're talking about money, I wanted to be clear about how this system that we came to, and most of you are aware, so I won't take a lot of time. But basically what we do is we ask the coaches, what trophies do you want to give to your players at the end of the season? And we take that up and we buy them. We figure out the cost that that's going to cost us. We divide it by all the teams, and then we send the bill as your fee. So that's what the fee is for, to pay for the trophies that you selected that you wanted. If you all decided that there was one trophy, your fee would be very small. But many of us want several different awards. So that's the reason the fees pop up. The other fees that are involved are the bookkeeper payment, the secretary payment for EMSAC, because the president doesn't get any money. We do it out of the goodness of our heart until tomorrow when there's a vote. And just so I kind of show you my way of presenting are all my sticky points. And Grant Meyer did a PowerPoint, so I know who I'm going to nominate tomorrow.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So does anybody have a question about the money that comes in the playoffs? You know, the regular season money is yours, obviously. It doesn't go anywhere, but the playoffs everybody's good with. You should get a cut from every check that we're profitable on, but we're not. We're having to work on making sure we're profitable everywhere. We should be, because there's a lot of people coming to these playoff games. Everybody's good? There's no change in ticket prices. All right, so the last 10, 11 pages of the handbook are sports specific. We're not going to read over every line of every page, but we are going to address each sport briefly, and we're just going to touch on things that we're seeing this school year and last school year that have come to our office that have caused some sort of some complaints or some issues that have been brought up. So we're going to touch on each sport real quick and go through them. And so Mr. Massey's going to touch on baseball.
All right, so we're going to start with baseball, but we're going to combine baseball and softball together since they're very similar and in the same season. So I apologize if I go over to one or the other, but just follow with me if you can. Talk about the rule that states that the pitcher can, after the pitch count, after they reach their pitch count, they can play any position. That includes catcher. However, the Andrews Institute recommends that you do not put them as catcher. This is another guidance recommendation, similar to pitch count, to keep students safe. Speaking of pitch count, we follow the FHSAA guidelines after consulting professionals in sports injuries. For the safety of student athletes, the pitch count chart was developed. It is not a gotcha. You went 2 pitches over, I'm going to report you to Mr. Massey. It's a safety guideline. If we were to go to a gotcha system, the only way we could do this fairly is if we brought in another umpire to count all the pitches officially. So basically, we're counting on the coaches to do the right thing and follow these guidelines, which the chart should be, and I'm not sure exactly which page, but we have that chart in here. We'll get that out to our baseball coaches then, just to make sure. Well, I think we do every season to make sure you have it. Another thing to note, there is a specific ball that is required. If you notice at any point in the game that the wrong ball is used, notify the umpire and allow the home team to correct the mistake first. Registered baseball officials can be hard to come by, as Brian has already mentioned. You need to confirm with the umpires before you ever make any changes to the schedule. The schedule is in stone until you get an umpire or a referee to make changes. That's any sport, because we have to have them in order to have the game. If you don't do that first, it causes many problems. For baseball, I believe it's a drop 5 bat. That is the only bat used. It would be bad practice to have anything but drop 5 at any practices or at any games. If you have it accidentally at a practice and then it somehow shows up in a game, it just causes havoc. So let's just not have anything but drop fives at our games and our practices. I think that would be a good practice. We all use the National Federation Rulebook. Any conflict or local rule should be listed in the EMSAC Manual. So if you ever see a discrepancy, kind of like we talked about today, a couple things have popped up that we need to fix, we'll look at that and bring it to EMSAC for a vote to be added to the book. Otherwise, talk to your principal and give them your input. So last, speaking of giving your input again, you all know the sport better than anyone. So if you have suggestions, please bring them to EMSAC. We are constantly trying to improve EMSAC and the EMSAC Manual. And the only way we can do that is if you bring your thoughts and your ideas to your principal to bring to the EMSAC committee to make changes. So please do that. All right, basketball.
Mr. Massey.
Oh, yeah.
Softball question.
Sure.
Has there been discussion as far as mandating masks for softball pitchers?
I'll let Brian speak to that.
Well, I mean, just with recent, there's just been some serious injuries in D1 and in high school. I've heard ours too.
So I've not heard that they're changing any of the rules for the mask for the.
Because I know some states have, and I was just
yeah, yeah. I'm seeing more and more of the mask on the picture, but I've not heard a rule coming that's going to make it mandatory.
Okay.
Every game I've been at, they've been wearing them that I've seen. So I think it's a common practice, maybe not a rule. Yeah. So, but I'll bring that idea up to the committee to talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so on to basketball.
So, the basketball tournaments and the playoffs, there's not going to be any changes. The list that's on this manual is the same that's always been. If there's a basketball coach in here and you've got suggestions, like Mr. Massey said, if you'll address that with your principal, you know, changes are easy, but it looks like basketball is running smooth. It's extremely profitable. Both sites and both class for playoffs was extremely profitable. It was a good turnout. The next page is cross country. On cross country, there's a lot of runners in the district. A lot of runners. The cross country event that we've had, whether we've hosted it here at the college or last year it was out at Freeport, it's probably the largest event of participation amongst athletes in our middle school conference. There is going to be some discussion as it has been brought to me often about cross country. So you need to address this with your principal so your principal's informed, and that is that we have JV sports in some of our sports. Cross country has JV. Some sports don't have JV. So this would be an issue that discuss this with your principal, let them know your thoughts, your feelings about JV sports in JV cross country. That way when your principal goes to the EMSAC, they feel informed with your information and they can go in and weigh in and say, no, this is what my coaches want. This is what my school wants. So touch base with your principal about the JV cross country program. And then the next page is football, which is probably the most involved of our sports for safety issues. So we'll let Grant go over football.
So like everything else, these rules, and we don't have a state governing body, we look at FHSAA for some guidance, and you know that stems from some of the college discussion and just kind of trickles down to our middle school athletics. There's not a lot of counties in the state that have athletics. That's a privilege that we do have. This has been in place for, I think, the last 2 or 3 years now, so we're starting to understand this. When this first came out with the amount of live contact that we can have and the amount of full contact in full pads, a lot of the coaches got upset. They didn't like it, but it's for the safety of the students. So without going line by line on that page 15, there are some important things on there. getting the students acclimated to the heat and being in helmets and then going from helmets to shells. You need to know these terminologies too, football coaches, and I think we all do. And then working to full pads, I think on the 6th day. All right, that goes for spring and in the end of the summer, fall, when we start practicing. And then when we do roll into practice times, are we following those rules of contact? No more than 2 consecutive practice days, 40 minutes a day, and you can kind of read on down the line. And we've done a good job. There's the terms that you need to know, and then the extra piece that sometimes we overlook or we might not do is having your written practice plan. If something happens to a student and some type of investigation comes in and they ask for your written plans, you need to have them. All right? That's going to save yourself. It can be somewhat generic, so you can use the same one week to week, but it better have the amount of times that you're going live and in full pads. So have a written practice plan. I don't think we ask for them, but if something happens, you're going to need it. Okay. So any questions with the football? I think we've done better now in the past.
All right. On golf, it's like Coach Reese was talking about. For golf, the 2 biggest concerns right now in our tournaments is one is the relationship we have with the golf courses. 2 years ago, we called around and every golf course told us no. And some of the reasons that they cited was the length of time that we were on the course, just to play 9 holes. I don't know if y'all played golf before, but 9 holes should take 2 or 3 hours at a casual pace. And we were taking like 8 and 9 hours for 9 holes. And I think we did real good this year. So I could tell that the coaches were kind of emphasizing that. So I appreciate the coaches doing that. By pace of play being adjusted, we're a little bit more golf course friendly. And then I think the coaches that worked this year worked a little bit to get relationships going with the courses. So we actually had 2 courses this year that agreed to host. So we had the 1A at one site and the 2A at another site, and that helped because we split the group into 2 smaller groups. So the relationship with the golf courses is paramount because you can't have a golf team without the golf course. And we're asking them to donate their golf course. So that relationship's good. So I appreciate the coaches doing what they do to keep that relationship going. I would expect everything will be fine next year. But the two biggest topics with golf has been the relationship with the golf course and the pace of play. And I think we made a big improvement on that this year from previous years. The soccer's just like basketball. It's run well. We've not had a lot of complaints, not a lot of issues.
I did have a question.
All right, go ahead.
It says that there will no longer be a 10-goal rule for middle school.
A 10. Which sport's that?
It says soccer. There will be no 10-goal rule for middle school. Last year there was one. I was wondering why it's actually 8. I was wondering why that got taken out.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that. So
number 2 and 3.
So what numbers?
2 and 3. It's actually 2.
Number 2 and 3. It's got like 2 numbers.
Yeah, I think there will be no 10 roll. That is 3. So that second sentence starts.
So I think there's an error in that sentence. I don't think it was meant to be typed that way because we adjust the manual every time there's changes. So I don't know the answer to that. I'm glad you spotted that. So that should be an 8 goal?
Yes.
Yeah, it should be 8. And that's what everybody's doing.
It's staying the same way.
Yeah. There's been no changes.
Okay.
It could have been a proposal that both
could have been. So we're going to, on the updated version, we're going to change that 10 to an 8. And then that's the policy everybody's going with anyway. Okay?
Coach Humphrey.
Yeah.
You want to go back to golf real quick?
Yeah.
Number 2 says all play matches should be 9 holes. Should just be 6 holes.
All right. The EMSAC principals have never agreed to go to 6 holes. And as far as if you ask the EMSAC principals, they believe it's 9. And years ago, it used to be 9. And somehow it evolved because the coaches have agreed. And I would get, in daylight savings time, it would get dark. And so everyone would just go, hey, let's just play 6 and turn them equal. And so I think it kind of evolved just by the coaches agreeing. But as far as the EMSAC principals ever agreeing, they've never agreed to just do 6-hole matches. So that would be something that we can ask them. And if they're willing to make it 6, that's fine. But I'm not so sure. If all the golf coaches believe it should be 6, I'm not going to argue. I'm going to agree with you. But I'm not so sure that you're enabling them. They should be able to play 9 holes in 2.5 to 3 hours. And I see y'all chuckling, so it's not possible.
No, I agree, because football practice is long and hot.
Right, and you don't get to get out like you.
I don't get to play 6 holes.
No, you got to play all 4 quarters.
All of them.
So that needs to be something. If the golf coaches want it to be cut down to 6-hole matches, y'all address that to your principal. Be glad to discuss it. Glad to put it to a vote. But right now tonight, yeah, I've never heard it being cut. They were just cutting it on their own. Yeah. All right, and then. For the last sports, tennis, track, and volleyball, there's not many changes. Y'all can look through it. Again, if you're coaching a sport and you've got a question or a concern or you want to address an issue, your best avenue is your athletic director to your principal. Your principal takes it, votes. It's easy to make a change because we don't have to ask anybody else. So we self-govern with our principals. So any change that you think might be best for your sport, it's good to offer that change. Does anybody have a question on any of the sports-related pages? Yeah.
Do we not have set rules and regulations for swim teams for this?
There has not been one input in there, but that's a good point. We just default on FHSA. If you're a swim coach and you feel like there's some local rules that we follow, if we can get those local rules put down, we'll add them. But right now, as far as I know, FHSA just falls under, the swim just falls under FHSA policies. Does anybody else have a question that's sport specific for their sport? Everybody's good? Yeah.
Are we ever going to get it to where you either swim or you play another sport? You can't do both? Because the argument opens up for every other sport.
That's the only sport. So what he's asking is, none of our sports overlap, and we always require everybody to play one sport. You have to pick one. Swim, we allow someone to swim and play another sport if they overlap. That's something that EMSAC principals voted on way before my time. It's been a long time ago, and it's not been changed. So until it's proposed and they vote, it's going to stay the same. I don't know what everybody's feeling is about sports overlapping, but in high school, an athlete can play sports that overlap because they can be in the playoffs for one sport and another sport start. But what happens is the two coaches just get together and they discuss how they're going to work this out for the best situation for that student athlete. And most of the time they'll say, well, this sport's going first because they take a priority because they're in the playoffs, and then they'll pick up your sport and there's no penalty. But the coaches work that out. And that's happening with swim, but it's not with the others. But that's a discussion that you can bring up to your principal. I could go either way on it. Does anybody else have a question that's sports specific? All right, and then the next page is a list of your all-conference awards. In the all-conference awards,
are based on how you finished the regular season. Did you have the best record in the regular season, or the second best, or the third best, or the fourth or fifth? That's the all-conference presentation, the awards for that. There has been some discussion about it should be based on how you finish the tournament, but that's not how it's been done in the past, because in the past, sometimes at tournaments, they already had those all-conference awards made up, and they gave them out at the tournament. So in years past, they've always done it by regular season, and then seeded you in the tournament, and then you finish the tournament. So right now, all conference awards are based on how you enter into the tournament. Okay? I know there's been some discussion, but that's something that if coaches are interested in changing it to how you end, that would be something you take to your principal. That would be something that your principal would take and discuss. And again, I can go either way on that, but we all just need to be consistent. And right now, what's consistent is it's how you enter the tournament. And then on all conference awards, if you want to, for your sport, purchase additional awards or purchase any, you're allowed to do that. So you would just have to let me know, and we would order the all-conference awards for you, but you would get the bill. Those are just the ones on that list that the EMSAC pays for. So if you get 4 and you wanted 6, you would have to pay for the additional 2. And I think like $20. So you'd have to take that out of your program. If you didn't make the playoffs, you could order some, even if you had like an 8th grader that you just wanted to honor. So you're allowed to nominate somebody. Those are just the lists that EMSAC pays for. Okay? Has anybody got a question on the all-conference awards?
Yeah, basketball need to be updated to the front, if not. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's not according to what. I think they're talking about the chart versus what's on the, I think the charts.
Oh, I got you. The chart has been updated. It's the most accurate. Yes. And so what you're saying is the language that's in the sport page doesn't match the chart. I got you.
See chart on that line instead of 4-5-3, 4-7.
Yep, that's a good point. That's a good
I think
point.
basketball's been given 4 instead of 3.
I got 6.
So this chart was adjusted last summer. So the year before it was different. But since we split into 2 classes, they adjusted this chart. But you're right, that's a good point, that they need to match. Yeah. Yeah. So that adjustment will be made on the next EMSAC manual that's updated to send out. That's a good point.